7:15, but we had to wait for the last couple of people to check in. Okay, so the appointed hour having arrived, a quorum being present, our quorum tonight is 10, and I believe we have about 112, so we're good with that. 213? It's gone up. Okay, now we have 213 people. 100 people snuck in while I wasn't paying attention. So, the appointed hour having arrived, a quorum being present, I'll now call the special town meeting to order. I'll ask the town clerk to come forward to read the warning and the return.
Warrant for the special town meeting, Town of Freetown, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Tuesday, October 18th, 2022, 7 p.m. Freetown-Lakeville Middle School Auditorium, 96 Howland Road, Lakeville, Massachusetts, 02347. To either of the constables of the Town of Freetown, greeting. In the name of the Commonwealth, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the Town of Freetown who are qualified to vote in the elections and town affairs to meet at Freetown-Lakeville Middle School Auditorium, 96 Howland Road, Lakeville, Massachusetts, on Tuesday, the 18th day of October, 2022, at 7 p.m., then and there to act on the following articles. And you are hereby directed to serve this warrant by posting attested copies thereof at all of the following places: the Assonet Post Office, the East Freetown Post Office, Junior's Convenience Store in Assonet, the Freetown Town Hall, Freetown Communication Center, and Freetown Fire Rescue Station number 3. Hereof, fail not, and make return of the original warrant with your doings thereon immediately after making service thereof to the town clerk of the Town of Freetown, Massachusetts. Given under our hands and seal of the Town of Freetown this 22nd day of September, Anno Domino 2022. The Town of Freetown Board of Selectmen, Trevor R. Matthews, Jared C. Zager, Carlos A. Lopes. September 28th, 2022, to the Clerk of Freetown, I have this day posted attested copies of this warrant in the designated places described herein in Assonet, the Assonet Post Office, Junior's Convenience Store, and the Freetown Town Hall. In East Freetown, the East Freetown Post Office, Fire Station number 3, and the Freetown Communication Center. Signed, Carlton Abbott Jr., Constable.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank all of you for being here. This is lovely. We don't usually get anywhere near this many people at a special town meeting. So I thank all of you for coming. And a couple of notes before we begin. If you have a cell phone, please make sure that it's been silenced. If you do wish to speak during the meeting, we have 2 microphones. There's one at the bottom of this ramp, and there's one in the middle between the 2 tiers of seating right there in the middle. When you come up, you just want to state your name and at the very least which side of town you live on, Assonet or East Freetown. You do want to have your vote paper the first time that you come up to speak so that we can identify you as a voter. And if there are any non-voters in the room, you want to remember that the non-voter section is the second row of seats here in the front. Also, so that you know, during the meeting tonight, this is procedural, I need to announce to you Articles 2, 3, 13, 14, 15, 16, 20, and 21 will be funded from free cash. Articles 4, 6, 9, 10, and 17 will be funded from taxation. That's just the method that we're going to use to fund if we pass those articles. Also, for a procedural item, at this time, I will ask for a motion to consider Articles 20 and 21 prior to Article 1. If somebody would make that motion. I have a motion. Is there a second? Thank you. And just the reason for that, those 2 articles were late additions. They're financial. They're unpaid bills from another year. We just want to take care of them first before we get into anything else. So is there any discussion on this motion only to change the order of those 2 articles? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, that motion is adopted unanimously, and I thank you. So we're starting with Article 20, which is the second to last article. Article 20, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $50.40 to pay unpaid bills to WB Mason Company Incorporated from fiscal year 2020 and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the town administrator. It requires a 9/10 vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion has been made and seconded to accept Article 20 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 20? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 20 is adopted unanimously. Article 21, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $137.28 to pay unpaid bills to Crystal Rock Water from the fiscal year 2022 for the transfer station and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the town administrator. It requires a 9/10 vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 21 as read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 21 is adopted unanimously. I thank you, and we'll go back to the very beginning. Also, one thing I skipped at the beginning, just in case anybody's curious who the panel of very happy-looking people who are up here. You have Cheryl Estrella, who is the town clerk. Mark Rich is our town's attorney. Margaret French is representing the Finance Committee. Deb Petty is our town administrator. And Kim Fields is our town accountant, who, by the way, will be retiring next month. So if we could show some appreciation to Kim. By the end of the night, she'll wish she had retired this month. Back to Article 1. Article 1, to see if the town will vote to increase the amount of tax credit a senior may receive from the Senior Work-Off Program from $750 to $1,500 annually and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion's been made and seconded to accept Article 1 as read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 1 is adopted unanimously. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $38,000 to purchase a new roadside mower for use by the Highway Department and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Highway Surveyor. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 2 as read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 2 is adopted unanimously. We also have a note. Everybody gave me programming notes at the beginning. There were free COVID tests in the lobby. Please help yourself on your way out. Please, the Board of Health begs you, please take some of the COVID tests home. They have way too many of them. Article 3, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $50,000 to pay for engineering services required to file the annual report to comply with the MS4 permit filing requirements and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 3 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 3? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 3 is adopted unanimously. Article 4, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $30,000 to supplement the budget of the Office of the Town Accountant for the purpose of hiring and training a qualified person for this position and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the town administrator. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 4 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 4? Sure. All right, so we need your name and what side of town you're on.
Freetown. How many hours do you have?
I'm sorry, we need your full name.
From Freetown.
We need your full name, sir.
Bernard.
Okay, thank you.
How many hours does the town Oh, open. How many hours do they work? A 40-hour week? What is the hours?
36, if I'm not mistaken.
Town count is 36 hours
I'm just curious, I'm saying, to hire another person, you said you work, instead of working 36, work 40, or you have all sorts of associated costs with hiring somebody else, with, unemployment benefits and among other things, that's all.
This is to increase the personnel budget. Is it on? Can you hear me now?
It's quiet. It's on, but it's quiet.
We'll start singing pretty soon. This money is to supplement the budget because when we have been trying to hire Ms. Vale's replacement, what we need to pay a town accountant is exceeding what we have budgeted currently. So we need to supplement our budget. This is not adding a second person to the accounting department, and then there'll be some training periods where they'll overlap, and I need to pay 2 accountants at the same time.
All right,
Okay, is there any additional discussion on Article 4? Seeing none, the motion was to adopt Article 4 as read. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 4 is adopted unanimously. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to amend the general bylaws, Article 10, Personnel Classification and Compensation Plan, Section 10.8, Positions, by adding to the list of positions contained therein the following new position, Community Program Director, and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the town administrator. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee takes no position on this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 5 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 5?
East Freetown.
Well, can everybody hear Paul?
Yes.
Okay.
I've never been known for being quiet. Why is this of a need for having this article be brought forth? More explanation on it, please?
Sure. I will kick that to the Personnel Board. We put names in the hat, he lost.
Everybody hear me? Yeah. Fantastic. Carl Zoll, Personnel Chair. How are you today? Good. All right. So, it's come to our attention from listening to many of you, whether it's our seniors or our different demographics, that we need more activities here in town. All right, whether that be utilizing boat ramp more, the beach, or more events for our seniors, this position will allow us to do that in conjunction with the COA. So, did I say anything? I think that's the black and white. So we just need to put that into the bylaw so we can add that additional employee. Any questions?
I have a question. So, Lisa Pacheco, Freetown, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. So several articles from here, we're going to be putting more money into unemployment. And now we're adding new a program director and some new personnel. So how do we balance that out? That's one question. The second question is, if this is for the boat ramp and the beach, we already have a revolving account. And if you're are you charging people for the new programs that you're going to be doing?
The idea is to expand what we have currently at the Council of Aging. So
So-
right now, what we heard from the seniors is they want to do more additional items, additional things. So this helps to that. So we're not charging additional for boat ramp or beach or for COA for that matter. This is so that everyone stays busy in a sense as far as programs and utilizing our town resources.
So that's the second part. The first part, again, was about the unemployment budget. We're adding to unemployment later, but we're adding positions now.
Thank you. Did I answer your question, Lisa?
No.
Not that part. That's why I said it again.
Okay, thank you.
No. So how are we adding, as a town, how are we adding new personnel when we're going to be adding to unemployment? How do we justify that?
We currently have somebody out on unemployment that is collecting, and that there was funds set aside for that position. When we rehired for the position, we had there's excess money in the budget, so we're moving that to unemployment to cover this person that's unemployment. It's in a department, it's not, it's the highway department, it isn't related to a community program director, so it's not somebody that would work into this position.
No, that's okay, I understand that, I'm just saying we're adding new positions, but we're also increasing unemployment, so does that mean somewhere down the road, we may have more people that we lay off to subsidize the new positions that we're offering now? Thank you.
No.
To answer that, I don't think the unemployment question is for the two people, the sextons of the highway department that do the mowers and everything else. That's a separate issue. What the issue at hand is, we're hearing from our town residents that we need more activities to be done. This is the direct result of that, adding these individuals.
One thing to remember too is I know everybody can hear, and I appreciate that because I would want to be doing that myself, but for the TV camera, it may end up being difficult for people at home that are watching this later who have nothing better to do to hear what we're saying if we don't actually use the microphone. So Article 5, again, we have a motion to adopt as read. Are there any additional questions or concerns on Article 5? Okay, hearing none, this does require a majority vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, in my judgment, the number of positive votes were enough to pass this article. So I'm going to call Article 5 adopted by the majority. Article 6, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $25,000 for the purpose of hiring a community program director and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the town administrator. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Okay, motion's made and seconded to adopt Article 6 as read. Can you make it out to the microphone? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul, you had raised your hand. I thought you were going to get it to say something.
I'll use my booming voice as usual, how's that?
We have to have some consistency, so I'm hearing microphone is the way to go. There is that one right there, if you can turn it around. That one right behind the counter.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, just a little more clarification on what this position is, what the entitlements are, longevity, where it goes, so forth.
Okay. Either the town administrator or the personnel board, again, you guys would be best equipped.
Hi, yeah, so the program director is a position that first we had to create in the bylaw, which is what the last article did, create a position. This now would fund that position for the rest of the year. So the thought process behind this was that we would have a person who could oversee our boat ramp, our beaches, our parks, and put some programming in place, and also coordinate programs for the COA. We constantly hear from the seniors that they would like to have more programming, and the COA doesn't have the staff right now to organize that. So this person would be in charge of those types of things, community outings through the COA and at the parks and beach, and oversee the beach and the boat ramp, which is quite an undertaking for us during the summertime.
Well, believe me, I'm at a point in my life that anything the COA can do is good for me as well. But would that not maybe something the town administrator would take care of?
Unfortunately, I would not have the time to oversee outings through the COA, or currently the beach and the boat ramp is quite active during the summer, and there's 10 to 12 weekends that we have staff down there, that we oversee the staff that's there, the attendants, and the executive assistant in my office has to work 7 days a week essentially during the summer because she has to go by and oversee the boat ramp currently in the beach. And so we're trying to alleviate that at this point because she's working 7 days a week to keep the boat ramp open and running efficiently.
Thank
So,
you.
you're welcome.
Do we have any additional questions or discussion on Article 6? Looks like yes. Yes.
I'm Mark Jones from Sonnet. Kevin, you made a statement, you said that it's for the rest of the year, so at 25,000, is that a $100,000 a year salary?
No, we're looking at a part-time position, probably wouldn't start until after the holidays. So we just put a sum of money in there to give us some flexibility.
Okay, so is there an annual amount that this person's going to be funded?
No,
For their budget?
No, but we're not expecting it to be a full-time position, we're expecting it to be a part-time position, and if we could find somebody that would do it majority in the summertime, we might start with that and see how it works. We're not looking to add a lot of substantial personnel where we might, down the line have to lay people off. I'm very cautious of that, and the board, we've been looking at that. But this gives us the opportunity to have that person oversee that beach and the boat ramp to start and work with the COA after that. So it's not going to be, there's not a $100,000 salary attached to this. This is just a partial year, part-time position. So, if I had to put a dollar figure, I would say probably somewhere in the $25 an hour range, but it's so hard right now to get employees that it's a moving target what you have to pay to get good employees. So it's hard for me to tell you today what we'll be able to hire someone for after the holidays for this
Have you
position.
established, a 20-hour position?
That was what we discussed, a part-time position, 20 hours to do the activities, and we'll see how that works out.
Okay, do we have any additional comments or questions on Article 6? Yes, sir.
Hi, David DeBase, has anything been looked into as far as, for example, you have Article 1 that we're looking at increasing credits to our seniors for work programs, things of that nature. We're trying to get mowers, things of that nature, and the budget's tight. We're looking for monies for everything. Has it been looked into that these seniors, we have great folk here in the town, are there any of those that could handle taking care of that position in lieu of with those tax credits and so forth, thus saving this budget of this increase for us?
Do we have anybody here from the COA that might be familiar with the work-up program that could speak to that?
Because if we're putting them to work and we're giving them credits,
Right?
why are we utilizing that instead of adding to our budget?
So seeing nobody from the COA, personnel or town administrator, either of you?
I will say the concern with that is the beach and the boat ramp on the weekends in the summer are very active, and there's a lot of things that go on at the boat ramp that can potentially not be the easiest job. There's a lot of people that go out on their boat, they might be drinking, they come back and they're confrontational. So I wouldn't feel comfortable with a senior down there. I don't think that would be okay to oversee that position. And they certainly could apply for the senior work off, and the COA could ask for one of the seniors to do this position. It may be a way to start the program and see how it goes, but it hasn't been talked about with the COA.
I thought to my understanding it was somebody to oversee the folks that were working there during the summer and to set the regimen of everything, not the person that's actually there.
They have to go down there quite frequently, though.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lot that goes on at the boat ramp and the beach.
Okay, do we have any additional?
I know you mentioned there's a lot of issues at the boat ramp and at the beach too, I'm saying. The person to be hands-on, go down there on the weekends and see what the issues are. You know what I mean? Because I know for a fact there's a lot of issues there, and, you know, supposed to have a beach sticker, a lot of people don't, and a lot of other issues. Nobody's really checking on that. I know they do occasionally, but that's how a lot of issues start.
Right, we are trying to ramp up the beach and the boat ramp and other programming, and this person would oversee that, yes.
All right, thank you.
Hold on. So just as a general reminder, we've already voted to create the position. We're now only discussing how much this person's going to be paid, or if they're going to be paid. Because if we vote no, they're not going to be paid.
Motion to call the question.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to call the question. This is not a debatable motion. The effect of this, if we vote yes, is that we don't talk about this anymore, we just vote on it. If we vote no, then we keep talking about it. All in favor of calling the question? Aye. All opposed? Okay, everybody's had enough time talking about this. All in favor of Article 6? Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, Article 6 is adopted by the majority, but not unanimous. It is by the majority. Article 7. To see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 1 of the June 6, 2022 annual town meeting by decreasing the amount appropriated thereunder for the annual school assessment in the sum of $93,940 and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. You may have on the front table seen that there was a handout. It says Town Administration in pretty big letters on the top. And if I'm not mistaken, somebody who's involved with town administration would like to make a motion to substitute the wording on this paper for what we just read. It's a form of an amendment. Somebody has to actually make that motion though.
I can make the motion to amend Article 7 to read as follows. To see if the town will vote to amend the vote taken under Article 1 of the June 6, 2022 annual town meeting by decreasing, I'm losing my voice, by decreasing the amount appropriated thereunder for the annual school assessment in the sum of $93,940 with $40,064 for education and $53,876 for transportation, and not take any other action relative thereto.
Okay, that motion's been made and seconded. The dollar amount does not change. We just needed to specify how this money was being reallocated. So is there any discussion, are there any questions on the proposed amendment to Article 7? Yeah, did we pay the electric bill? Maybe we should give them this money back so they can pay the electric bill. Is there any discussion on the amendment to Article 7? So hearing none, we're going to vote now just on the amended language. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the amendment of Article 7 is adopted by the majority because there was one very faint no. I would now ask for a motion to adopt Article 7 as amended. Okay, that motion has been made and seconded. This is to adopt Article 7 as amended. Is there any discussion on Article 7 as amended? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 7 as amended is adopted unanimously. Article 8. To see if the town will vote to transfer the sum of $12,074 to the unemployment budget from the following sources. $2,206 to be transferred from the Highway Department personnel budget and $9,868 to be transferred from the Cemetery Commission personnel budget and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Highway Surveyor and the Cemetery Commission. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 8 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 8? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 8 is adopted by the majority. Article 9, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $11,610.44 for the purpose of hiring a senior clerk who will float between departments and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 9 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 9? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 9 is adopted unanimously. To see if the town will vote to, Article 10, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $75,000 for the purpose of hiring a human resources director and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article.
Make the motion to table. Second.
All right, I can't accept a motion to table because we haven't discussed, but I can accept a motion to defeat if you'd like to amend it to that.
Make the motion to defeat.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Try this and see how it goes. An alternative motion would have been to pass over, which has the same effect, but we'll give this a shot. Article 10, the motion is to defeat. Is there any discussion on Article 10 before we take this vote? Hearing none. This is a little bit backward because it's a motion to defeat. So you're going to vote yes for I don't want a human resources director. All those in favor of not having a human resources director? Aye. All those who are opposed to not having a human resources director? Aye. Okay, let's try that again. If you do not want to fund this article, aye. Aye. If you want to fund this article, nay. Nay. Well, that is a pretty even split, so we're going to move to a count. Okay, so we do have two counters. Again, this is a little bit tricky, so you need these white vote tickets. So if your vote is, and again, bear with me, if your vote is yes, I do not want a human resources director, please raise your ticket now. Yes, I do not want a human resources director. Yeah. Next time we're going to word this a little bit differently. So this doesn't happen. No, that's okay. You caught me just not quick enough.
$75.
75? Okay, now raise your ticket for yes, I want a human resources director. This is yes, I want a human resources director. 36, thank you. Okay, the yes votes, which were yes, I do not want a human resources director, were 109. The no votes for people who want a human resources director was 69. The motion passes, which means the article is defeated. So the article is defeated. There is no human resources director now. Okay, Article 11. So there are two articles tonight related to the Bristol-Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School District. Article 11, which is about a debt exclusion. That is because they are in the process of preparing to build a new school for their district. And Article 12, which is to join that district. I have been told the Board of Selectmen is going to make a procedural motion on Article 11. Is that correct?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, the town administrator will instead.
I make a motion that we pass over Article 11.
Does that have a second? Okay. A motion has been made and seconded to pass over Article 11. Let me explain to you the mechanism of that. The Board of Selectmen no longer wish for Article 11 to be considered tonight, but it was not part of their agenda to review the warrant, so they were unable to withdraw the article. They are now asking that you vote to simply take no action on this article tonight. They are, if I'm not mistaken, you are looking to move forward on Article 12. Is that correct? Correct. Okay. So Article 12 is whether or not to join the district. The selectmen are asking that you still debate and vote on whether or not to join that district, but that you not vote and debate this evening on the manner of paying for their new building. The motion before us right now is only to pass over Article 11, which means we are voting right now and discussing right now only whether to not vote on Article 11. So is there any question or discussion about not voting on Article 11?
We have town council, please explain a little more.
Okay, yes, so we'll get a more in-depth explanation from town council before we open up the floor to general discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Through you to the meeting. Good evening, folks. Mark Rich, Town Council. I know this seems kind of odd and probably took a lot of you by surprise, so I guess you're getting a little bit to see the sausage being made right before your eyes. As the moderator explained, we have two articles before us tonight with respect to the school district and the high school construction. The first article is a borrowing article with respect to borrowing the town's allocable share of the construction costs for the new high school building. The second article would be to actually join the district. The reason they were placed in the order that they were placed in was essentially to give you as the voters a warning that there's a financial component based upon the construction of the school. But we've had a lot of discussion. This article has a long and somewhat tortured genesis to bring us to tonight's meeting. But what's important for you to know is that the borrowing to actually construct the school occurs at the district level. The town does not borrow and does not authorize the actual borrowing for the school. District does that, its members do that, you're not yet a member, so that proceeds without you essentially. The idea of this article was to borrow your share, because once you join this district, you're going to be assessed a share of the costs to build this building. Those are the capital costs, part of the district agreement. And there was discussion early on about how is the town going to afford to pay its share. And one of the options that was floated, which is what resulted in this article, was let's borrow that, and let's borrow it and make that borrowing contingent upon what's called a debt exclusion. Debt exclusion excludes this amount from the amounts that the town can raise under Proposition 2.5. So it allows the town to levy additional costs on the residents, subject to a ballot question. So you would have voted on this article to approve the borrowing by a 2/3 vote and to make it contingent upon that ballot question. And then you'd come back at a later date, within 90 days of tonight, and you would vote at an election to debt exclude or not debt exclude. And if you voted not to debt exclude, this borrowing would go away. If you voted yes, this borrowing would go forward. But in further discussion, the determination was made to proceed in a more ordinary course, which would be simply to allow you as the voters to determine whether to join the district, and recognizing that that would result in incurring this cost. And if you join the district and the town becomes a member of the district as of July 1st of the next fiscal year, then with that joinder would come with it this assessment. You'd be responsible for that assessment, and then the select board, as the town's appropriating authority under Proposition 2.5. Now it gets a little complicated because usually you, the voters, the appropriating authority, but under Prop 2.5, it's actually a decision of the selectmen. The selectmen could then put a question before you, separate and apart from joining the district, whether to debt exclude that assessment. So then that's a different funding mechanism. And so you will have joined the district, you'll be subject to the funding obligation for your share of the building cost, and then whether you're going to allow that to be paid within the levy limit under your current taxation or outside the levy limit for an extra assessment would be subject to a Proposition 2.5 debt exclusion question. So taking no action on Article 11, passing it over, would allow you to get directly to the discussion on Article 12 about joining the district and no longer give consideration to the town borrowing its share. It really, it's something of a mechanical situation where that you will be responsible for that cost. You might have an opportunity to debt exclude it, but you won't be borrowing it because the borrowing actually is done by the district. So I hope that clarifies it a bit and explains why this article is being withdrawn or passed over. It doesn't affect your decision as to whether to join the district or not. As the moderator has indicated, you've got Article 12 coming up and you'll be able to debate that. This is just to essentially bypass a borrowing by the town, recognizing that the district has done its own borrowing. And Mr. Moderator, I can certainly answer any questions if they arise.
Sure. I want to assure folks also, because I know that there are a number of people in the room who have financial concerns. Because this article, if you vote to pass over this article, that does not take away your opportunity to discuss the expense of joining this district. That is still a consideration of whether or not to join this district. So this is not going to prevent discussion on the cost of the construction of the new school. It is just asking that you not deal with this particular aspect of this question right now. So I don't want anybody to think that they're being shut out of discussing the financial ramifications or implications of joining this school district. That will absolutely be something that can be discussed under the next article. So the discussion right now is only on whether or not to pass over Article 11. And I do see some folks getting ready, getting lined up to come down and speak.
Good evening. Paul Safe, I live in East Freetown. Just to clarify, Mark. Is this on?
It's on, it's just quiet.
Hello, is that better? Okay. Listen. Mark, if we vote to go into the district tonight, we've obligated the town. End of story. If there's no debt exclusion further on down the road, you devastate the town's finances because you're going to be constrained by 2.5%. So what do? You close up half the town operation. This doesn't make any sense to me. You could devastate the town by going into this district because now you're going to, let's say we go into this district. Down the road, the selectmen call for debt exclusion. It's not passed. When we vote for it, it's not passed.
So you're gonna devastate the town operation. This is crazy. My opinion, I've been in town for a long time, I've been involved in town. This is nuts.
If I may, Mr. Roderick? Sure. I'm not going to debate the issue because that's a matter for debate. I think a lot of that discussion will come up under Article 12. The only thing we're doing here right now is eliminating the borrowing, which was contingent, because again, the district is actually, has done the borrowing. And we're suggesting that the town not incur a borrowing obligation with respect to its allocable share. Of course, Mr. Sadik is entirely correct. If you vote yes on Article 12, and I think the moderator is giving some latitude to discuss a bit of Article 12 in with Article 11, but if you do vote yes on Article 12, you will have that obligation. Mr. Sadik is correct. It is my understanding, and I can't speak for the board, but the board is carefully reviewing the going forward with a debt exclusion after the town joins the district. I think the board is waiting to hear if you join the district, that will inform the board's decision as to whether to proceed with a debt exclusion. And I'll let them speak to that, and I'll help them with that on Article 12. But I think that's a consideration. I know that was a consideration for the Finance Committee as well. So the only thing that's being done right now is eliminating the borrowing. Mr. Sadik's point is certainly pertinent to consideration of Article 12. And so that's the weighing, and he's entirely correct. You join the district, you're going to be subject to paying that debt. Whether it's going to be debt excluded or not will ultimately be a decision for your Board of Selectmen. Obviously, the board is listening to you. They're sitting here right now, and they're going to listen to this discussion and give full consideration to whether to seek that debt exclusion. Debt exclusion can happen anytime. It could happen, a month after we have this vote today. It could happen next year. It's not foreclosed at any point. So if it's determined that it really is having this devastating impact on the town's budget and resources, the board can call a special election and have that debt exclusion vote. That you're not foreclosed, and that can happen if it's voted down. There could be multiple votes on a debt exclusion. So that opportunity is not foreclosed, and certainly is not, it's not ended by any action on Article 11 or Article 12.
So I'll just remind folks again, we're discussing right now only whether or not to pass over Article 11. We're not discussing the meat and potatoes of it, if you will, so go ahead.
My name is Wendy Bethany. I'm a resident of East Freetown. My concern with this is in an effort to be transparent with having this debt exclusion. It's actually, in my opinion, manipulative, coercive to vote against Bristol Plymouth joining. How are people supposed to vote yes in confidence when they don't know how they're going to pay for it? I don't believe that this was an appropriate thing to bring. I mean, when did you decide this? You handed me this to show me how much each resident is supposed to pay, which comes down to, in households, about less than 40 cents a day if the debt exclusion is approved.
So I'll kick that to the Board of Selectmen if you want to address when the decision was made to try and withdraw this article.
So the decision was made today. The decision was made because it was really the way that the article was originally written. It's as though the town itself is taking on the debt, and it was just really miscommunication. In fact, the district is taking on the debt. So the debt exclusion is still absolutely on the table, and I think a very important. I mean, personally, I think if we must do the debt exclusion, but the way this is written isn't really applicable to the current situation. So it was just the articles were not written with the right intent, or maybe the right intent, but not the right language for what we're actually trying to achieve.
I understand that, but I think that the way that this occurred could be devastating to the vote for Bristol Plymouth. And all of our kids deserve an opportunity for vocational education, equally so as their Lakeville residents. There are 8th graders sitting in this building every day next to us here in Lakeville who has a vocational opportunity. And our students do not if people don't vote for Bristol Plymouth. So I just feel as though this was a very unorganized, deceptive way to present this issue.
If I may, Mr. Moderator, I think to try to give additional clarification, and I think calling it deceptive, I think misunderstands what the board has been working with. Again, this is something that's been germinating for quite some time, with the original thought that the town would borrow its share. We're not talking about the funding of the joinder into the district. Article 11 is simply with respect to a borrowing. And what is recognized is that the district does its borrowing, that's already been done. This article would have allowed the town to borrow for its allocable share and then debt exclude that borrowing. It has nothing to do with the assessment itself under Article 12 and how that's going to be paid, because town meeting doesn't actually vote on that debt exclusion. That would be determined first by the Board of Selectmen to put the ballot question before the voters, and the voters voting that at an election. So what we're simply doing now is recognizing, after a lot of tortured discussion, and I understand the Selectman's point that it happened tonight because of whether the district was borrowing or not. But the discussion early on was some suggestion that maybe we'll borrow our share, maybe we won't. Let's put an article on to allow for that possibility, but then further clarification, further discussion with the town accountant, who's very, very knowledgeable in these matters, and recognizing that it really would not be appropriate to essentially borrow what could be as much as $15 million, so tie up the town's borrowing authority in a borrowing that really would never have happened. Debt exclusion or not, the town really wouldn't be borrowing because it's not the town's, the town doesn't borrow to build the school. It would be to fund the allocated share, which would, again, a determination we made, whether that's going to be done within the levy limit or outside the levy limit. And that decision can be made at any time. And again, you've heard from your selectmen already, and I think the other two, we're at town meetings, we're not constrained by the open meeting law, and I think the nods that I'm getting, I think the board is going to look towards that debt exclusion. So that's their decision, and that will come at a later date. But I think we need to separate the two issues. It certainly was no intent to deceive. It was an attempt at providing as much transparency as possible. Again, Article 12 was just a borrowing article for the allocable share. It was not actually the joinder and the obligation to undertake that allocable share. So I hope, again, I know it's confusing, hence the reference to sausage being made, but it was all done in good faith to try to give as much information to the town as possible.
Yeah.
Would it be fair, Mark, to say that the article is broken and won't do what people think or want it to do?
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to put it.
So, and I have a clarification too. So the Board of Selectmen, along with the Vocational Exploratory Search Committee, we added the article to join, just to join BP. And then the Finance Committee, who's responsible for, make sure we're being fiscally responsible as a town, they submitted the second article that we're speaking about now, that in retrospect, the language there is not achieving what the intended purpose is. So that's all we're talking about here, is, I understand that, unfortunately, you can't really have one without the other. I get that, at least to talk about them. The financial part of this is an important part of it. But we will talk about joining BP separate from this conversation.
I understand that. I just think that this was really poor forethought in putting these articles together, and it's unfortunate that it's coming to light this evening.
Yep, I understand.
Thank you.
So again, the question before us right now is only on whether or not to vote on this article, and the financial part of this will be part of the next article. So we can continue discussing. I just want to make sure we're focused on the right object right now. So go ahead, please.
Hi, Tracy Knowles, So this is more for everybody in this room. I've raised 2 sets of kids now. One that was, 3 kids that were allowed to go to Oak Colony. Now I have another set of kids that have no option to learn a trade at this moment. So what is the cost of our future for our kids? So if you vote no on these, We're not giving the children of Freetown the opportunity to learn a trade like those of us who served in the military thought. So just remember that when you make that vote, all right? What is it? What does it cost to give our children the opportunity that other children have? And yes, a lot of people here are older and their children aren't in school anymore, but you're making a vote that is going to definitely make a difference in the children of our future here. So that is all I want to say. It isn't about the money, it's about what we're offering our kids. We don't have nurses, we don't have mechanics anymore, we don't have any of these things. There's a shortage here. And if we vote no on either of these, or joining BP, we're limiting what our children are able to do. That is all I wanted to say.
So we are starting to drift a little bit into what Article 12 is. What I'm going to do is call the question now on whether or not to vote on Article 11.
Real quick, Mike. Hi, guys. Hi, folks. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Will Sinkowitz, a Sonnet, member of the Freetown-Lakeville Regional School Committee, also a member of the Freetown Vocational Exploratory Committee as well. And I just wanted to respond to Mr. Sadek's comment because he makes an unbelievable point, right? If the debt exclusion fails, it's not our intent to really bankrupt the town. That's not what we want to happen. As a matter of fact, that's a conversation we're going to have in the future here, right? Freetown can actually back out of the Bristol-Plymouth district after joining. It's the same exact process as we're going through now in order to gain entry, right? All the member towns of the district would have to vote unanimously to let us in. All of the member towns of the district would have to vote unanimously to let us out. What I can tell you is that those member towns, say we vote to go in, debt exclusion fails, it has to come out of the operational budget. We don't want that to happen. However, the member towns aren't going to want Freetown as a member of that district if they're not paying their assessed share, right? So there is a mechanism there. Paul brings up a great point, and it's something we do have to keep in mind. But I will speak to on the next article. I don't want to get ahead of myself as far as kind of the backstory about how we got to where we are now. But I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
All right, so right now we are voting, strangely as this sounds, we are voting on whether or not to discuss Article 11, which we've been doing for the last 15 minutes. So this is a motion to pass over, which will have the effect of as if Article 11 had never been there to begin with. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 11 is unanimously passed over. Article 12, which is the main event that everybody has been chomping to get to. To see if the town will vote to accept and adopt the amended agreement establishing the Bristol-Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School District, adopted by the Bristol-Plymouth Regional School Committee on May 4th, 2022, entitled Restatement of the Bristol-Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School District, which amended and restated agreement adds the town of Freetown as a member of the Bristol-Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School District and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen and the Vocational Exploratory Search Committee. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Okay, I hear a motion and a second to adopt Article 12 as read. This is now the open forum to discuss whether or not we should actually join this school district. So if anybody has questions, comments, or concerns on that subject, now is the time. Please come forward.
Hi, Mike.
Will, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, guys. Will Sinkowitz again. So I just want to be able to provide you with the context of the last 3 years and how we've ended up here, hopefully being able to join Bristol-Plymouth, okay? So the class of 2024, when they were 8th graders, they went through the entire process. We had a certain number of students, I think it was 17 families. They were looking to obtain that vocational education, went through the process with Old Colony, who we've had, as Freetown, we've had a long-standing relationship with Old Colony. We've never been a member of that district. we've had a kind of a handshake agreement that they would always take our kids on a tuition basis. It was a great relationship for 20, 25, 30 years. Everyone knows someone that went to Old Colony. Everyone knows someone that loved Old Colony. The class of 2024, after going through the admission process, being accepted, going through the interviews, were told very, very late in the game by Old Colony that due to increased enrollment by the member towns, that they would be unable to attend. All right, unacceptable as far as I'm concerned as a member of the Freetown-Lakeville Regional School District, as a member, a citizen of Freetown, right? Unacceptable. So very quickly, we met with Old Colony and we said, hey, what can we do here? How can we fix this? How can we rectify this? The superintendent at the time called around, called called New Bedford Vogue, called Diamond, called Bristol Plymouth, looking to see if we could find an emergency use case just to get those kids the education that we all know they deserve and have a right to obtain. All of those area schools were on wait lists and could not, by law, accept any students, outside students, because they had a wait list of students that were members to their district. We quickly went out there and we saw the landscape, right? We did our research. We looked up educational programming. We met with all the vocational schools in the area. We met with Alex Magalays, who's a member of town, he lives in town, superintendent of Bristol Plymouth, and he was immediately receptive to taking our kids in on a tuition basis while we worked to obtain membership. And he's gone above and beyond what he said he was going to do. We have kids right now at Bristol Plymouth, I think it's roughly around 20 or so kids that are now juniors and sophomores going to be freshmen next year. Okay? Fast forward to the process of joining the district, which is why we're here today. We're here today because Freetown handcuffed themselves multiple times by not being able to join a district. There was multiple attempts at negotiating with Old Colony. Nothing ever got done. So without that membership, folks, I think it's important to say that our kids just don't have the access. They can't get into a vocational school if there's a wait list of students that are members to that district. It can't happen, right? So this does two things for us. It provides our kids access. That's first and foremost. It provides the town with a financial flexibility long-term to know how many kids are going to go, what it's going to cost, what the transportation costs are, and also provide them with a better educational program than what Old Colony offered. Bristol Plymouth offers 6 more shops than what Old Colony offers. And it's also less on a per pupil basis to send our students to Bristol Plymouth than it is to send them to Old Colony. So this is a move we should have made years ago, right? What mucks it up is the building project, the debt exclusion, that vote, right? Financials are super important here, folks. But there's a mechanism, right? The debt exclusion is there. Freetown has the ability to back out of the Bristol Plymouth district if we go down a road and it's like either bankrupt the town or send our kids to BP. We have that mechanism. So I just wanted to be able to provide the context for why we're here today. And moving forward, if this doesn't pass, we don't join the district. What do things look like? Well, I already told you that students can't get in if there's a wait list of member students at that school. If they do get in, Freetown's still required to pay the tuition, which would be higher than what we'd be paying to send our kids to Bristol Plymouth. We're also required to pay the transportation. So say we have 5 students get into Minuteman Tech. We have 5 students get into Cape Cod Tech. We have 5 students get into Diamond. Freetown's going to be footing the transportation bill to send those kids to all those schools. There's a cost there, right? There's a cost there. So we did a lot of research. This isn't something we're springing on you. This has been 2 to 3 years of work. And certainly we understand the other side of it. We understand the town side of it, the financial side of it. But looking at this through an educational lens, what I can tell you, being in education for 15 years, educationally, this is a no-brainer, an absolute no-brainer. What we have to be able to do is find out that debt exclusion piece. However, God forbid we don't, and I hope that's not the case, we have the ability to be able to back out. So I just want to be able to provide folks with a context of how we got here tonight. This isn't something that we're throwing on the warrant as a whim. A lot of work's gone into it, a lot of research, a lot of moving parts, but that's why we're here. So thank you so much.
Do we have any additional questions, discussion, concerns, etc. on Article 12? Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, Thomas Ashley, East Freetown. We talked a lot about costs, costs of Old Colony versus BP, being a lower cost per pupil to send our students there. I think for the taxpayers in this room, we'd like to know what that projected cost is for not only operational costs for the school, tuition, and transportation, on top of potential debt exclusion costs as well.
Do we have anybody here from the school committee or the vocational study committee that can answer that question?
Good evening. My name is Carol Lees. I'm a town resident, and I'm also the Director of Finance at Freetown-Lakeville Regional School District. And while this financial information... Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. While the financial information wasn't provided from our office, it was provided directly from Bristol Plymouth to the town, Freetown town administrator. I can comment on some of the observations that I've made of the information.
Sure. Could you just come a little bit closer to the mic?
Sure.
There you go.
So the first is that if you look at the size of Freetown, we would be similar in enrollment as compared to the town of Berkeley, who's currently a member at Bristol Plymouth. And so if we look at what their annual assessment is for this year, it's about $969,000. And if we compare that to how town of Freetown has been budgeting the cost to send our 60 students or so to Old Colony and Bristol Plymouth for this year, we're spending about $1.1 million. So it's pretty close to a wash from an operational standpoint. And of course, this is before we would have that capital assessment for the new building. So, when I really look at the current impact, it would be minimal. The impact for tuition and transportation is relatively stable to what we're paying now to the two schools. And really, the greater impact would be when that construction project takes place.
Did that hit on all points of your question?
Go ahead. Just to confirm, $969,000 is roughly what Berkeley pays for their operational cost, transportation, and the tuition costs, correct?
That is correct, and that's based on, I believe, 89 students, which is slightly above what we believe we'd be sending to Bristol Plymouth.
And 1.1 million is what we're paying right now, budgeted in this fiscal year, for the students that are going to BP and to Old Colony.
That is correct.
Okay. Will there be any students still in Old Colony when we start enrolling students in a Bristol Plymouth capacity, should this article pass next year?
This should be the last year that we have students at Old Colony.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can I address something here? Yes, Berkeley is paying that $900,000. That is just the per pupil assessment. They're paying additional for the busing, but also the money that we are spending, that 1.1 million that we are spending at Old Colony and at Bristol Plymouth, those are considered out-of-district students for us. We are getting reimbursement from Chapter 70 through the state of $471,000 that offsets that 1.1 million. So it's really 500,000-600,000, not 1.1 million.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator. Could I make a comment?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify that the $969,000 includes both the tuition, capital, and transportation. When I say capital, they budget about $250,000 a year towards their normal annual capital improvements. The breakdown is $903,000 for tuition and $65,000 for capital and transportation combined for Berkeley, for a total of $969,035 budgeted for FY23.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? I'm looking at the 15.
Lynn, we just need your name first.
I'm sorry, I apologize for that. Linwood Bailey, East Freetown.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The 15 million, is that based on our population? Because the others, there were seven present members at the time, and let's just take Taunton. Taunton's population is greater than ours. Are they also paying 15 million? Or are they paying a greater amount based upon the population of their city? That's my question.
I can address that. What they will do, after they accept students every year, they accept with a blind town. After they accept, then they look at the towns, they count up how many students from each town, and they assess out of the 100% students, how many are in your town. And you are responsible for that percentage of the debt. So they're estimating that we will be roughly 5.3%. That's the 15 million. If we have a year where there's more students that are accepted, it will be higher.
So to answer my question, is everyone paying from all, there would be 8 of us, eight communities?
No, everybody's paying their percentage.
Everybody's
So
paying.
Berkeley is a little bit higher. I think they're 5.7%, so they're paying 5.7% of the debt. Every town, whatever their percentage of the student body is, that's the percentage of the debt that year that they are responsible for.
Okay, so that Freetown would be paying less than Taunton, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. That answered my question.
Mr. Moderator, if I could just add.
Sure.
So Taunton and Dallas will share, and of course, this is estimated based on, they're projecting what the enrollments will be once they do the acceptances of the students. But Taunton is projected to pay 40.20% of the debt, while Freetown would be responsible for 5.3%. And that was based on an expectation that 76 students would be enrolled at Bristol Plymouth at that time.
So as of now, Taunton would be paying about 8 times more than we would, give or take.
That's correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian, go ahead.
It's Brian Miller, East Freetown. It's just, it boggles my mind that we have kids in a town that the majority of the people that live here, we all have trades. We're all working the trades. And we're even talking about not allowing our kids to have access to a trade school for something that we all had access to and everybody else did. And, the cost, we already said, like Will said, we can back out if we have to, if it turns out that it's not something we want to be involved with anymore. But in the meantime, you've also heard that we flubbed this a few times before. We dropped the ball. We didn't get ourselves secured into a vocational program before. This is the time to do it now. And we've been told again that if it doesn't go the way we want, we can back out if we have to. We had the same setup with the I remember back when we approved the money for the police station, we said that we were going to keep on top of the select board to make sure that they were doing what they said they were going to do and paying everything back. And I believe that that's been done exactly how they said they were going to do. If it turns out that we don't think that this is going to be fiscally responsible for us, we can get out. But in the meantime, to leave the kids hanging, like imagine being a kid in 8th grade right now, really, like they just said, 8th grade kid, your friend next to you is going off to the trade school that you want to go to too, and now you can't go. Right? It's ridiculous. So I think we should just end this discussion and vote yes on this now.
Karen Fasciano Sonnet. I would like to piggyback on what this gentleman just said. As an educator, I see a lot of our students in my school district that are unable to go to vocational schools. We're talking about a person's education here. I know there's a lot of older people in here, but you probably have grandchildren that go to the public schools. They need to learn a trade. Sometimes these trades will earn them more money if they go to college. Some of these families cannot afford cottage. I agree, we need to put this on, we need to let it pass, and that's it.
Paul, go ahead. If you'd like to defer, or you're next in line, but if you'd like to defer, that's fine.
Yeah, I can defer.
All right, go ahead.
Samantha Tripp of Sonnet, Mass. I'd like to call the vote.
Okay, so once again, this is a motion to call the question. This is just, we go immediately to a vote, and we're voting on whether or not to keep talking about this. If that receives a second, because that I don't think we have. Okay, well, all right.
Can I ask my questions now?
Unfortunately not, because the motion's pending.
Once again, the senior gets shot.
Chivalry is not dead, but it punishes in the end. All right. So we are voting now on whether or not to stop talking about this and just vote on it. All in favor of calling the question? Aye. All opposed? Nay. I do believe that was overwhelming in favor of calling the question. So we are now voting directly on Article 12. All those in favor of joining the Bristol-Plymouth Regional Vocational Technical School District? Aye. All opposed? Nay. It is a simple majority. In my opinion, the number of ayes did outweigh the number of nays. And the article is adopted by the majority. Article. Well, I'm just waiting to see if anybody gets something. Not yet. Usually after we vote on a big thing, people start to leave. I think more people are actually walking in the room. I'm not sure what's happening. We're going to move on to Article 13. Article 13, to see if the town will vote, and there is a typo in Article 13, so you'll hear me read it the way it is supposed to read. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to fund and implement the first and second year cost items contained in the collective bargaining agreement between the town of Freetown and the Freetown Police Association, covering the period of July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2025, not 2024 as is printed, 2025, and or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends that this article be funded in the amount of $112,617.18. So again, the Finance Committee recommends $112,617.18. So we have a motion to accept as read. What I'm going to ask that you amend that to is a motion to accept as recommended. That catches that dollar figure.
Motion to accept as recommended by the Finance Committee.
Okay. So the motion has been made, seconded to adopt this article as recommended by the Finance Committee. That is with that dollar figure, $112,617.18, cents, and it is for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2025. Is there any discussion on this article? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 13 is adopted unanimously. Article 14. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to acquire by gift, purchase, and or eminent domain certain property located at 2 South Main Street, being Assessor's Map 211, Lot 175, Extension 0, and described in a deed recorded with the Bristol Fall River Registry of Deeds in Book 3224, page 321. Said property to be under the care, custody, management, and control of the Board of Selectmen for general municipal purposes, and to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of $151,000 for the purpose of funding said acquisition and costs incidental or related thereto, and further to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into such agreements and execute such instruments as may be necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, and or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a 2/3 vote. The Finance Committee does not recommend this article. Motion is made and seconded to accept Article 14 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 14? Okay. Somebody else is coming to the microphone, but you might want to take your shot this time. We're going to let Paul get to the microphone. I'm sorry, we were discussing the movie Hamilton for a minute. Paul, go ahead, please.
Two statements. One, I'd like to back up on one to say that when I was previously shot down of my chauvinistic approach to help my townspeople was to say, I have a 40-year-old, so I'm not be in the system whatsoever for school. However, we should be, everybody's complaining about how kids don't know this, they don't know that. We should think about the education of our children first, then the monetary. Second point is, why does the Finance Committee not want this article? Some in-depth on it, if possible.
It's not so much that we don't want this piece of property, we just feel that $151,000 for that tiny piece of property is too much money.
Okay.
Amy
Please go ahead.
to Water Street. So I was going to ask that same question for a piece of property that is usable possibly only to the town, when you can buy a buildable lot for $200,000. This property is currently assessed at about $53,000. With all of the discussion we've had tonight about being fiscally responsible, why would we go ahead and pay this sum of money for this property?
Looks like we have a selectman who's jumping to answer that.
Yep, I can speak to that. So we own the property next door at 4 South Main Street, which is dilapidated, totally useless, falling apart, and somewhat dangerous right now. We cannot do anything with that property without also owning the property next door. And I understand, I think $151,000 by itself is a lot for that piece of property. But that will then take the useless, worthless piece of property we have right now and make it worth a lot more value that we could either sell or do something productive for the downtown, Four Corners and Assonet. Otherwise, if we don't own both of those, nothing's going to happen with either of those pieces of property, and it's going to be a blight on the center of our town.
So we're willing to spend the taxpayers' money at a higher rate than we think is probably feasible just for this. I really struggled with the $151,000.
Yeah, I understand. So the person who currently owns the property, that's what they're willing to sell it for. I mean, that's what it is. And otherwise, if we can't get it, then nothing's going to happen. And both those lots will be worthless, and it's going to stay like that until we finally do make a decision at some point.
Mary Brown, chairperson of the Historic Commission. We've had numerous people look at number 4 South Main Street. Each time someone has looked at it, they have wanted to save what they could, but they need the land next door. And at that time, it was not for sale. Now it is for sale. However, the town owns 4. By obtaining number 2, it would make it more worthwhile. And whether or not the town moves ahead with it and makes money on it in the future or preserves it. This is in the heart of a historic district, which is on the National Register. We've already lost several buildings in the center, and so has East Freetown. And we want to prevent anything detrimental from coming its way. With the town owning it, we have control. And we are encouraged about what the possibilities are. Thank you.
I'm not going to yield this time.
That's okay.
So just for clarification, the piece of property that we're discussing is that hole in the ground at the Times Square in Assonet.
Yes.
Okay.
There was a building there, and somebody sold the building, which was on the historic register, and I think it's down the Cape someplace
It's on
now.
Martha's Vineyard.
Okay. Brilliant.
Yes. So in case you didn't hear, Paul was referencing that building was taken down in 1995 and moved to Martha's Vineyard. And Mary clarified that it was not on the historic register then because the historic register came in 1999, was it? Yes. So we now have the historic register so that we don't end up with any more holes downtown. Charlie, please.
Has the town had a
Just
appraisal?
for the folks that don't know.
Charles Sullivan, High School. Has the town had an appraisal done of the property?
I will defer that to the town administrator.
No. I negotiated with the owner, and this is the price that he is willing to sell it for.
I would suggest that before we purchase anything like this, we would have a commercial appraisal done of the property. So we actually go paying for a legitimate price for it on the market, not on someone's land. So that would be my suggestion before we do anything else.
Amanda Barlow, East Freetown. My question is have we done research, or Mary, you might know this, any research on if there's reimbursements or grants available to us since we're on the register, this property's in the register, if we were to purchase it for the 151, is there money available to us that we could possibly be reimbursed because it's a historic site?
So Mary's response, if you couldn't hear, was not to purchase the site.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go up here and then down here, please.
Jeff Morse, 28 Water Street. This question is on the last special meeting warrant to become a parking lot. Do we have the assurances from the town administrator and the board of selectmen that this is not what this piece of property is going to end up being?
I'm going to defer that to the selectmen because they would be the ones making the immediate decision on that.
Oh, and I might point out that it was voted down for that reason.
Yep, I can speak to that. So we had two articles, if you remember last time. One was to purchase it, and one was just to use that property as a potential overflow parking because we have a huge parking problem at Town Hall. I think it was very clear that that was not in the town's will to have a parking lot there. So we do not have any intentions, I know the current board does at least, no intentions to turn that piece of property to a parking lot. The other one thing I'd like to note about this piece of property is that it's been identified as a key location. If we ever wanted to have a city or town septic, or town sewer, sorry, that would be an ideal location for us to put a pump. That is another, just why it's such a geographically important place for the town to own that piece of property. And I just want to make note of that. I did not mention that earlier. Thank you.
Are you saying we're going to be expecting something that we hit town sewer and through Water Street?
That is something we have been looking into, and it's something I champion. I think that we should be doing that, and we're working through a lot of the feasibility study of that.
One final point. That has been empty now for 25 or almost 30 years, that parcel. I think that possibly it might have become a vernal pool. You should check and have the soil and water people check to make sure that that isn't the case, and you would run into trouble as far as filling it in.
I can't really speak to that. I'm not sure.
I'll say just that the Conservation Commission staff is in the room and heard what you just said.
Okay, thank you.
Wave. There she is. Okay, please go ahead.
Cynthia Mather, East Freetown. The article mentions that it may provide an area where a septic system could be installed. What if it does not?
Before I kick that question, I'll just caution when the explanation has more details than the article. So we're voting only on the article. But if Deb, if you can address the septic question, or if Kevin is here, I don't know if Kevin is here. Kevin's the health agent. No, not at the moment, please. Deb, please.
So currently the 4 South Main Street, the red building in the center of town, sits on a piece of land. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to. Currently, the red building, 4 South Main Street, sits on a piece of property, and it encompasses pretty much the entire site property. There may be a 5-foot setback around that existing building. This is the lot to the right of it, and if you were to ever try to do something with that building, you need a septic system, as we all have at our houses. That piece of property will provide that area. It hasn't been perked, so there's always that chance that it wouldn't pass, but I don't foresee that. You know, the material there is pretty decent, and it's just a matter of getting it perked and putting in the septic system that would then service that red building. Without that, that building can never be any occupied building. You can't have an office building without a bathroom. So that is why it's valuable to the town. And if I can say, it's also very valuable because, as many of you know, the intersection at the 4 corners has become increasingly dangerous, and we need to get some traffic control in that area, and we are currently working with engineers to come up with a solution for the 4 corners, and this would also give us the ability to move the roadway, change things around if that's what the engineers determined was in the best interest of helping 4 corners intersection. So the value in this property, while it may not appraise out at what the owner is asking, it has many values to the town. And once the town owns it, they will control it. So it's not only a value that it will make the red building at 4 South Main valuable, it will give us maybe possible solutions to the intersection issues, and it may give us the solution to having a pump station if we ever were able to get the sewer. So there's just so many valuable uses to it that it's something that I think the town should look at purchasing.
So its usefulness is not depending on having a septic system installed there, your word?
The usefulness of the red building is dependent on the septic system going on that piece of property.
Okay.
Am I answering your question?
I thought there was a plan for a new building.
A new building on that lot?
Yes, I thought it would be
Not that
a town
that
building.
discussion has not come up. It would be to service the existing red building, which would have to be, probably renovated or removed and rebuilt with the same elevation.
With some grants.
I'm sorry.
Mayor is saying there could be some grants available if we do that.
Yeah, grants for the red building possibly because it's in the historical society, but not for this land.
What would that building be used for?
That isn't something that we have really discussed at this point. It's a town-owned building. We've owned it for 20 years, and the town it's just continued to deteriorate to the point that it's at.
Thank you.
Mary, go ahead, please.
Okay, I just want to also, this isn't in the historic district. This is village business. So there is a list of businesses that could happen in this piece of land that are allowed under our zoning. So village business goes from the intersection of Water Street to the South Main Street Bridge. It's a very small section. And to the fire station on 9th Street. And there are a list of things that are allowed. Having the town have this valuable property would give us control on what could happen there. And I think to not take advantage of it, we will be remiss. Thank you.
Hi, John, Freetown. Just have a couple questions, kind of a two-part question. The first one...
I'm sorry, John, we need your last name, I'm sorry.
Oh, Viorella. So I keep hearing that it's run down, it's crappy. Does the town have any mechanisms to force them to clean it up? And secondly, if it is so valuable, as everybody says, why is it only assessed at $53,000 and we raise its assessment next year?
The comment about decrepit, I think, is the building next door, which we own. So,
okay, all right. I just got a little confused there.
But the point is well taken. If anybody... I can hear the word assessment being, I'm not really supposed to answer the question right now.
I would just say, like, I don't think assessed value always has a direct correlation with market value. And I think we all know that. Like, you look at your assessed value for your house versus what its values on Zillow are two very different numbers. So I think that, I mean, I don't disagree with getting the property appraised. It is a prime location in the middle of its own village. You know, I'm not against that, but I think that we shouldn't just immediately assign the value to the assessed value.
Mr. Moderator, I'm just curious, has anyone thought about getting the Board of Health inspector down there and condemn that property, forcing the current owner to clean it up? Because it's one thing if it's an eyesore, it's another thing, it's dangerous.
I will tell you, each time that we change building inspectors, there is a bet about whether that building will go with the building inspector or not. Mr. Dean, please.
Davis Dean, 38 North Main Street, Summit. What I'm thinking is some of the value, there's assessed value versus projected value. And I think even the assessor, if they went ahead and raised the assessment, they would have to come in with an appraisal. So I think the best thing to do is to get an independent appraiser in there and put a price on that property based on what they feel its current value is. If that's what you're going to apply to purchase it, and go from there.
Brian, go ahead.
Brian Miller, East Freetown. I don't know if I'm just slow on something here right now, but if we're getting offered 151 to buy it from and we go and get it appraised and it's more than 151, are we going to pay more? So I don't think it's a smart idea to get it appraised before we buy it, because right now the market, try finding any land that's usable for $150,000. I mean, and it's making something usable in the middle of our town that looks like crap right now that we can fix. We can't do anything with it until we do buy this land. They already said they're not going to put a parking lot. That's what killed this thing last time. We're not going to put a parking lot there, so what's the problem?
Once again, we don't know what the value of the property is. We have an agreement between the town administrator and the owner for $151,000. We have the assessed value at $50,000. Now, I'll agree that the property is not probably worth the assessed value, but let's get an answer to the question by a professional that can tell us what the property actually is. I don't know if it's $151,000, but I think we should have the answer before we vote on it. That's my point, all right? I think that's Steve's point also, that Mr. Davis.
Yes.
Mike, what I was trying to say before is you need the appraisal. If you want, one of the things they talk about is condemnation. If you go to condemnation, the other side is going to have to justify their higher rate if the appraisal that you go to condemnation with is less than 150.
So that's true. If we were taking this by eminent domain, we would be getting an appraisal and it would be not necessarily the same as what we're paying for it now. Am I saying that right? Yes, we're starting to get into attorney territory here.
And we don't want to do that.
No.
Just a brief comment, because obviously we're not approaching this as eminent domain. When you get into eminent domain, which is a more aggressive manner of taking someone's property, you then get into a war of appraisals and a requirement for appraisals. At this point, what we're talking about is purchasing the property. Essentially, there's a mechanism under law that allows the town to determine that a property is unique, and so go essentially directly to the property owner and negotiate a price. And I think it's important to recognize, as has been stated, assessed value doesn't always equate to market value, but it has to be remembered that at the end of the day, the seller determines what the property is worth, because there's only so little that the seller will accept. So while you might get an appraisal that says it's worth less, that doesn't mean that the seller is going to sell it for less. We've all experienced that. I think my car is worth a lot more than you think it's worth. I'm not going to sell it to you for less. So that's essentially where you are. The property value essentially is set by the owner if the town wants to acquire it through this process of a uniqueness determination and a purchase. If the town proceeded with an eminent domain process, then the town would obtain an appraisal and purchase it for that appraised value, and then go through the legal process, which could be quite lengthy and expensive, to determine what the value would be. And courts are more likely to split that valuation after lengthy and expensive litigation. So just be mindful that an appraisal is only necessary if we're going through the eminent domain process, and may not be valuable if you're just simply trying to buy it directly from the owner.
Excuse me, since the building was taken down to move, is the lot a legal size to build on, with the frontage that you need dimensionally? Or we guys just want a high number in case the land is pretty much useless to anybody, because nobody else has bought it, so what's that tell you? How long's that land been sitting there?
Is the building inspector
Is it
here?
buildable?
Okay, the building inspector is not here.
I'm saying if the land was so valuable, I figure somebody would have bought it by now and done something with it. Basically, it can't be worth really much.
Motion to vote?
Okay, we've had a motion and a second to call the question. Mystery, we may never find out the answer to the last thing that was asked. So again, we are voting right now simply on whether or not to stop talking about this and vote on it. So the motion to call the question, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion to call the question is adopted unanimously. On the question of whether or not to adopt Article 14 and purchase the property, this requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, it is going to be necessary for us to count this vote. Unfortunately, it's too close. With a 2/3, if it's not obvious, we have to count. It's required under the law. If you are in favor of purchasing the property, please raise your ticket now. Well, listen. Now this town is great. There's some new colors. Thank you.
Good night.
Put it in your budget.
$39. Oh, yeah. I was doing math, I'm sorry. All those who are opposed, please raise your ticket. If you are opposed to the purchase, please raise your ticket. Okay, we have our counts. So the yes votes are 69, the no votes are 125. The article is defeated. Article 15, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $12,000 for the purchase of 2 ballistic shields and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Chief of Police. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 15 as read. Is there any discussion on Article 15? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 15 is adopted unanimously. Article 16. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate and/or transfer from available funds the sum of $18,405 for the cost associated with active shooter training of police officers and firefighters and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Chief of Police. It requires a majority vote. The Finance Committee recommends this article. Motion was made and seconded to adopt Article 16 as read. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Article 16 is adopted unanimously. Article 17, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease or leases with Alfati LLC to lease all or a portion of the building located at 59 to 65 South Main Street, formerly known as Santander Bank, to be utilized as an annex to the town hall, such leasing to be undertaken in accordance with the provisions of General Laws Chapter 30B, Section 16, upon such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen determine to be in the best interest of the town, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into such agreements and execute such instruments as may be necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, and further to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the amount of $36,000 for such lease or leases and/or take any action relative thereto. This was submitted by the Board of Selectmen. It requires a 2/3 vote. The Finance Committee does now recommend this article since they have been provided with the dollar figure. Yes. So when the warrant was printed, they didn't know. Now they know and they recommend it. Motion is made and seconded to adopt Article 17 as read. Is there any discussion?
How much money?
I'm sorry?
Monetary amount.
$36,000.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
36,000, all with the building there, is it a portion of all the building? Is it a portion or?
Just a portion.
Just a portion?
Just a portion.
36,000? You can't utilize the old police station for something like that?
I'm sorry?
You utilize the old police station for that?
I'll have the selectmen address that. I believe that that building is occupied.
So currently, as most people are aware, the old police station is under agreement with the regional food pantry. So we are not able to use that building. Santander would offer us, well, I say Santander, where Santander was, would offer us a good stopgap of where we can move at least one, if not several departments over from Town Hall, which will help eliminate some of the parking concerns and give people some more space. I think it will help with the overall flow of how things are working in Town Hall. So I hope I answered your question.
So I have a couple of questions. The first would be the food pantry. I agree that you just said it's under agreement for $1. If you needed a space, you can get out of the food pantry for $36,000. You can rehab, do whatever you need to do up there and move into that position. Or you could take the same $36,000 and use it at the old schoolhouse, which is next door. You just talked about spending money to possibly fix up a house in four corners that's dilapidated, you could also, instead of doing something like that, spend the money and fix up the old schoolhouse and move into that, instead of throwing money down the drain, basically renting at the same time.
Can I address that?
Yes, go ahead.
All of those things could be viable options, but the cost to rehab the red building or the schoolhouse will far exceed the cost of this lease and take a great amount of time. We are in a critical need at the town hall. In many, many ways, we have 24 employees, we have 18 parking spots every day. It's hunt and peck, trying to find a place to park. Also, during tax time, it is very difficult for people to get in and to pay their taxes or to do business at the town hall. And we need more employees, but we have difficulty getting employees. We have no place to put them. We currently have an employee on the 3rd floor in the attic space of that building. We would like to get that person down onto one of the floors. And it is difficult to have, we're not handicap accessible. It is difficult to do business in that town hall as it sits. This, renting the old Santander Bank, leasing it, would give us some stopgap measures while we decide and figure out, the town figures out how they're gonna move forward with their building needs. So the cost, that's for the front piece in the back room. That will provide quite a bit of extra space for the town and help us alleviate both our need for space, our need for storage, and our parking, and it will help the residents that need to come and do business within the town.
If you can be, there's fewer people. If you can be loud enough, we'll give it a try.
Thank you. I'm just curious, should this discussion be going on now, especially where down the road a little ways, we're going to need a new building for the COA period? So wouldn't this be incorporated into a new COA building?
So I think this building is becoming available as of December 1st, I believe. So again, this is an immediate relief for the town hall. Yes, it'll be a 3-year lease, but it's going to take us longer than 3 years to build a new building on any whether it be the COA, library, or anything. So this is sort of a measure to deal with our immediate needs.
Right, but if the town, I realize this is hindsight, which is wonderful, if the town had looked at 25, 30 years ago, to build a complex here over where the police station is, and had a whole complex, we wouldn't be in this. It's the center of town.
Correct.
Our building committee chairman is on his way.
Love doing so, and I'm not get to that. My question was more, when does the lease expire at the old police station? I believe that was a 3-year lease. And point of clarification, this is $36,000 for this year, but you're entering into a 3-year lease with that. So Santander really is $108,000 if you're entering into a 3-year lease
It'll be
at $36,000 a year.
That's correct, $36,000 a year for the lease. And the old police station, I believe, is up in June.
June 23, correct?
Yeah, and I'm having, the town is having a feasibility study that they funded at the last town meeting to look at that building to determine if it has a repurpose value, if it can be repurposed for offices or anything. Because of course, there has been a feasibility study that has stated that police station is not in the greatest shape for offices. So again, we're having that feasibility study updated to look at, and they're going to look at that building and give us a recommendation once and for all, what it can be used for and what it cannot be used for. But even if we were again to use it for offices, it would need to be, a lot of work would need to be done. And again, that's more money and more time.
But my question still remains, wouldn't it be better until that option is available? Once you sign this 3-year lease, you're committed to 3 years, and in 6 months or 8 months, if that building becomes available, then we lose the opportunity to move into that building, or we can just pay the lease and move out of that building to the other. So wouldn't it behoove us to put this off until the spring town meeting and come back then and say, we need the space now, it didn't work out, or whatever. Because it seems like all we're doing is really paying $36,000 per year going to a building that we may have an option on for I wouldn't say for free, but we already own and we already can use. I know as speaking for the building department, the building commission, as somebody said I was chairman of. 3 years ago, we had taken a vote not to raise that building to try to see if we could repurpose that building and use it in the future. That unfortunately that didn't come to fruition, but we might actually have an option to do that going forward. And I think by doing this, it kind of at least takes that option away. I think now would be the time to wait and see what happens in June. And if they're going to move on, if they're going to stay, we want to renew their lease. That's all an option we can do in June and not spend the money now.
And I understand you, the option, the time is money, I would say. The bank is available now. If we don't lease the bank space now, it won't be available to us most likely. And the location of it is a really prime location for the residents. Whereas if they have to do business with the town hall and that annex, they're close together, right? They're not gonna have to drive across town and come back. So if we don't act at this town meeting, the option of the bank, leasing the bank won't be available to the town. So that it was just, it's all comes down to the timing of when it became available. And if we were to repurpose the old police station, again, it would take quite a bit of time to get that ready to have offices move into it.
Well, I disagree with that, but okay. So we're voting to spend $108,000 over the next 3 years when we have the option of maybe not having to spend any money over the next 3 years. So I just want to make sure the taxpayers know that.
Mr. Dean first, and then.
When we authorized the new police station, one of the things that they highlighted was the poor condition of the structural wall, especially that it was up against being subject to water. So if that building had that problem then, it probably still has it now, it would have to be remediated, and what she said was having a building evaluation study done. That still would have to be remediated, so you probably wouldn't be able to get in there for a good period of time until that if you spent the money to remediate it. My point.
Do you have a follow-up to that, or?
No, I agree.
Oh, Mark, go ahead.
Well, it's being used now. I mean, you're using it for food pantry, they're using it out of the building all day, so I don't know about the condition of the building. It just goes to, let's maybe not spend the money on this. As far as Deb mentioned that location, well, I think the pantry location, the old police station is a better option for the taxpayers than it is to go to South Main Street down from Santan down Bay for the people of East Freetown. So, thank you.
We can, no, sir, you can speak, but just with the mask, we can't hear you, so you'll need to come to the microphone, and so we can hear you.
Jerry Corvo, Southern Massachusetts. I didn't interrupt everyone, so I can wait.
I think they want you to come to the mic. Oh, so you get to wait.
Jean Fox, a Sonnet. Quick couple of clarifying questions, if I can. You're renting a portion, or you're proposing to lease a portion of that Santander structure, correct?
The former bank.
Right.
The former bank.
To Jean's point.
The entire structure or a portion of it?
Not the entire plaza, the bank.
The building, the whole building.
All the area currently
Hold it, folks. I understand, because the way the article is written, it says to lease a portion of the building, and it gives the entire address. We're only looking at the bank portion, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that was the question, because if somebody else were going to have another portion of that building, then you have common area charges, other things that you would want to consider. I just wanted to be clear on that. So you're just looking at the building, but the entire building?
Not the entire building.
The bank, I meant the bank piece, yeah, I didn't mean it,
Yes.
I applaud.
So we're,
Yeah, okay.
we're not getting the barber shop or Sadel's or Harris.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
And nobody's getting Sadel's now, that's true. Stated preferences. Go ahead, sir, please.
Jerry Cornwell, sir. I'm wondering whether or not we looked at the town has looked at the option of getting used FEMA trailers and possibly installing those at the old police station as a workaround for additional office space.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
You, what was,
I'm wondering whether or not the town has evaluated the possible option of looking at getting FEMA trailers and
use FEMA trailers.
putting them on the old police station lot.
Use what?
FEMA, trailers from FEMA.
No, we haven't looked at that option.
Would that be a possibility?
I guess if it came to that, it could be a possibility.
Okay, is there any further discussion or questions on Article 17? Peter? Okay. We have a request to reread it. To see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into a lease or leases with Alfadi LLC to lease all or a portion of the building located at 59 to 65 South Main Street, formerly known as Santander Bank, to be utilized as an annex to the town hall. Such leasing to be undertaken in accordance with the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 30B, Section 16, upon such terms and conditions as the Board of Selectmen determine to be in the best interest of the town, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into such agreements and execute such instruments as may be necessary to effectuate the purposes of this article, and further to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds the sum of $36,000 for such lease or leases and or take any action relative thereto, submitted by the Board of Selectmen, requires a 2/3 vote. The Finance Committee recommends this in the amount of $36,000. The motion that is before us is to go ahead and do this, to adopt the article as read. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Nay. In all fairness, I think that that passed, but for the folks who voted no, we will take account just to be sure, for fairness for them. It requires a 2/3 vote, yes. All those who are in favor of leasing the bank, please raise your vote tickets now. Makes the dream work. That thing I'm doing at 1 o'clock got canceled, so I might go. 61. Okay, all those who are opposed, all those opposing leasing the bank, please lift your tickets now. Okay, the yeses were 94, the noes were 71. That does not make for 2/3, so the article fails. The article is defeated, I should say. Article 18. To see if the town will vote to amend Article 11.3 DB of the Freetown General and Zoning Bylaws by striking 11.2 DB in its entirety. The article would be amended as follows. D, lot sizes, existing lots. Nothing in these bylaws shall prohibit the construction of a single-family dwelling on existing lots smaller than 70,000 square feet and 175 feet of frontage, or on existing lots containing wetland areas, provided A, the lot was legally created, lot shown on a plan of land approved by the planning board and duly recorded with the registry of deeds prior to any increases in minimum area and frontage approved by the town. New B, construction of dwelling on such undersized lots must conform to current state and local health regulations applicable to the type of structure proposed. C, existing lots containing wetlands shall be subject to review of the Freetown Conservation Commission and its rulings and conditions, if any. This was submitted by petition. It requires a 2/3 vote. The Finance Committee does not recommend this article. The Planning Board takes no position on this article.
Make a motion to not accept as read.
Okay. This caused a little bit of confusion before. Can I interest you in a motion to indefinitely postpone? It does the same thing, it just is easier to vote on. Okay. All right. Are you agreeable to the changed wording of the motion?
What is the change?
So you asked for a motion to not accept. We changed it to a motion to indefinitely postpone. It does the same thing, it just makes the voting part easier.
Point of order. I think my motion, I think, carries a stronger point based on how the rules of order.
It does. That's why I'm just asking your consent if you'll change it or not.
Discussion, please.
Okay, hold on. We're not on the discussion phase yet. Okay, so Paul is not changing his motion, so the original motion is to not accept the article. The second motion would then be to indefinitely postpone if we get to that part. Let me just write that note. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Discussion.
Yes.
Erin Gifford Camel, Sonnet, South Main Street. I just want to be very clear about what Article 18 is proposing. So as you'll see, the bylaw actually proposed herein is identical with the removal of just subsection B. What subsection B is what we call common ownership. This law, as written, was enacted in the 1960s. It's very outdated, and what it does is it eliminates several landowners, primarily in the Sonnet Bayshore area, of controlling their property. What it did is, when this was enacted, it caused all landowners that owned contiguous lots, those that touch each other, again, primarily in the Bayshore area, if any of those lots were considered undersized, meaning that collectively any 2, 3, 4 or more parcels would collectively achieve less than 70,000 square feet, the town merged them. What we're learning now, several years later, is that unless residents came to these meetings, they actually didn't know what happened. So now we have people who thought they passed down pieces of their land in the Bay Shores to their grandchildren, and this land is useless. It cannot be merged, even though it once was severed, because it was merged in the 60s by this subsection. What we're proposing, the removal of this subsection, would enable all of these landowners to use this land the way that they could have used it in 1964, its enactment. So essentially, if it were then buildable, it would now be buildable. of course subject to other modern safety regulations and such. This impacts again primarily the Asona Bay Shores community and perhaps a few other parcels on Long Pond. And what it does is seeks to make the land that was forcefully and unilaterally merged without notice properly to all residents, able to be separated in the way it existed into separate lots in those limited circumstances to that handful of families that seeks to regain control of their land. Happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
All you're next.
This is a hot point for me. Back in the days when I was on planning board, we had people who lived in both these subdivisions, Heavenly Heights, Asona Bay Shores, and I think the classic one was there was a couple in Asona Bay Shores that had a lot that all of a sudden the septic system didn't work anymore. So therefore they petitioned the town to get an opening to say that they could get around the law that says that your well water supply and your drainage or septic system must be 100 feet apart. People making the submission, a lot 60 feet square. How do you do that? So that is one of the reasons, going back 30 years ago, why those areas have town water supplied in Heavenly Heights on the east side from New Bedford. And that's why on Asona Bay Shores on the west side, they get the water from Fall River. And it used to be that if you lived in Freetown, you had to provide your own water supply through a well, whether it be an artesian well or a point well. And your septic system had to be the same thing. So this is what this is. This is a way of trying to go back the issue of 25 years ago when we shut it down. Thank you.
Just want to clarify, because we have two members of the Water Commission, at least, who are here. Is there public water in both those neighborhoods, Asona Bay Shores and Heaven Heights? No. There is in Asona Bay Shores, but not in Heaven Heights? Okay, thank you. Any additional questions or comments?
I'd like to respond to that comment. It is correct that that is why this was enacted, and that is why it has been amended several times. However, we of course do have, specifically in the Asona Bay Shores, the technology to allow for proper septic. And if any of this land, which is a handful of parcels that we're talking about, if any of this land is separated, sold, and built upon, all of those properties will require all proper septic and conditions, and it will do so in a way that doesn't impact the neighbors in a negative way.
Okay. Is there any additional questions or discussion on this article? Yes.
Director Ball from Masonic. I understand your concern prior, way back when. However, back then when you couldn't get the amount of area between your well and your septic, that no longer applies, because now all you need is a septic, because it has town water. So it doesn't give you the right to take the value away from the people who own that property. They should be able to use their property, because they can now meet the guidelines.
May I answer this gentleman's question through the moderator?
Yes, you may.
Believe me, sir, I totally understand your situation, but most of those properties were originally set up as vacation homes for people who lived in Fall River or Asona, Fall River or New Bedford, and they wanted a place to go that was cool in the summertime. However, should the town be responsible for an offsite that the state created for saying where the two pieces of water and sewage should be separated? Don't we violate a state law by approving this?
No, we do not violate the state law, because they don't have a well, they have town water. We have town water in the Bay Shore. So there is no violation. They can meet the guidelines that's required by state to build.
Can I
So
just,
why does it give you the right to take the value away from these people?
Hold on 1 second. Margaret's trying to interject, and then we'll...
can I just mention that right now the question is not specific to Asona Bay Shores? The next article is. This particular article encompasses the entire town, which the entire town does not have town water. So I don't know if maybe we want to table some of this discussion for the next article.
The purpose of that bylaw, the way that it's written, is because if you can't meet the building guidelines, then
you're not allowed to. If you can't meet the 100 feet between well and septic, then you can't build.
Could that question be answered through our legal attorney?
Could you restate your question?
What this gentleman is stating, and I agree with him to some point, but can our attorney answer this question based on state and/or county laws of whether or not this can go forward or end up in the negative?
Again, through you, Mr. Moderator, briefly, obviously, as just was indicated, this bylaw may apply to properties that can or cannot comply. But again, my understanding is that the change being proposed, the amendment is to strike the original section B and re-letter the other sections. So we're not changing that issue. And again, if it doesn't meet other requirements, the mere fact that zoning has been changed, if it doesn't meet, say, Title V requirements or other statutory requirements, that will be on top of this. So you would not be able to relax those requirements through this bylaw, but it would have to be as applied by lot. The mere fact that zoning allows something doesn't necessarily mean it's allowable through, say, the Board of Health.
Is there a member of the planning board here?
I know there's at least one. When I called him the chairman of the building committee, he wasn't thrilled. So when I call him the chairman of the planning board, I don't know if he'll be any happier.
Because sometimes what we previously did, going back in years, was to take each one of these properties, like the one discussing, and make them into a one-lot subdivision. Because I'm also concerned about this article passes, and then they decide to sell. And therefore, what responsibilities get passed on to the new person?
Well, because he called out the planning board specifically, I'll ask Bob to respond first.
What was actually the question?
The question basically is I'm asking that perhaps this article should be withdrawn and should be brought back with a recommendation or non-recommendation based on the current building committee as well as the planning board. And to then say, okay, based on lot-to-lot responsibility, we will make each one of these one-lot subdivisions. Therefore, they can't expand it and sell it off in parcels.
So because this lot was submitted by petition, it cannot be withdrawn. We either approve it, we defeat it, we refer it to a committee to study it, we can't withdraw it.
So, speaking of this planning board, the planning board is responsible for anything that comes in front of it that has to do with zoning determinations, to have a public hearing. Where it's a petition article, we're not allowed to change it, adopt anything, add amendments to it. We simply hear it, have a discussion, present it, make a discussion to all the people that are present, and we make a motion to either recommend or not recommend, or take no action goes there too. It has nothing really to do with the zoning. It has to do with what's buildable and what was grandfathered. What we're talking about is pre-existing non-conforming lots that were combined. The example that was given was in the Bay Shores, where these were 100 by 100, some people bought double lots that bought 100 by 200, but this is town lot. So this could be a lot that's 40,000 square feet. This could be a lot that's 60,000 square feet. It just doesn't meet the 7 combined. So there could be room, plenty of room between the 100 feet between well and sewer on some of these lots. Your question about the state.
How many lots are we talking about? Lots of 12 to 18. That's it?
Hold on one second. The question is, what's the number of lots this is going to affect?
The planning board did not give a definitive answer of how many lots this would affect. The separation between the sewer and water on the state level, I believe, is 50. Town council can provide if I'm incorrect. But on the state level, it's 50 feet between well and sewer. The town of Freetown's health bylaw, and it's a health bylaw, is 100 feet between well and sewer. So that's why there's no. We didn't give an opinion because A, it's not a zoning question, and B, it's a petition article. We're not allowed to make changes to a petition article.
How does that affect the abutters?
The abutters are to be affected the same way as any abutter does at any time.
based on the zoning area.
Based on the zoning, correct.
If you go down the house lot, there's an $800,000 house, and next door they decide to open up a gas station.
If zoning allows for that, then the town's already voted to allow a gas station next to that. The only place that's allowable is in general. That's a very small lot, and I don't know if any of these would apply. I can't say definitively any of these would apply. We're talking most of these lots are in the residential zone.
All right, hold on. Erin's looking like she wants to say something, so we'll interrupt for a second and let her in.
I did want to speak to the fact that of all the lots that we have located, which in transparency cannot be definitively ascertained at this time, we do estimate it to be between 10 and 20 that would be affected. What's happened is that there were some people that owned a lot of these lots that were very, created a very sophisticated loophole. If you look at an assessment of this land, you'll see that quite a bit of it is what we call checkerboarded, whereby two people, often husband and wife, actually purchased the land in a black and white checkerboarded fashion, if you will, as again, a sophisticated loophole to avoid the contiguous ownership because neither of the two lots touch. And as such, that property, while you would think in your head geographically we have quite a bit eligible, is currently not. And I also truly, because we're getting into many conversations here about zoning, about sewers, about buildability, I really want to emphasize that all this petition's asking to do is to remove subsection B. It would be so many other conversations what could happen with that land. If the owners would like to separate, to pass down, to sell, and then if people were to want to buy, there's so many suppositions there, and there are some potential that we should explore. But no home will be built that is not to code, especially sewer code and all of the other safety recommendations in town. This is simply a vote to remove that subsection to allow for people who have adjoining lots that were once merged to now separate them and regain control of the land that was taken away.
I think, Mr. Moderator, that my point that's bothering me is that to allow someone to take two small, undersized lots, join them, and then at another point in time, open them up to two separate lots again. Versus to say, you take them and make them into one lot. So if you've got two 100-foot by 100-foot lots, which is basically a quarter acre, then let them keep it that way. But if they're going to open it up, and I wouldn't want to live next door to say, oh, now I got this aside of me?
You're actually bringing up a great concern that I'd also like to address. Thank you. So there will be, perhaps, a landowner that has two lots that in 1964 were merged that does not now want them separated because they enjoy their field. It's very, very simple for said landowner to appear before the board, ask for what we call a Form A, where they say, dear board, please remerge these properties. And the board does have within it the administrative authority to make that a very simple and very convenient process that doesn't require assessments and surveying and engineers, lawyers, and the works.
To me, I think it hurts the abutters.
Okay, I have a motion to call the vote. Is there a second? Okay, motion to call the question. So this again is voting on not talking about this article anymore. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion to call the question is adopted unanimously. On Article 18, this is a motion to not accept. So remember, we played this game earlier. It's confusing. If you are in favor of defeating the article, if you are essentially against the article, please raise your ticket now. Oh, I'm sorry, we've got to do this by vote first. I got ahead of myself. Sorry. If you are in favor of defeating the article, if you are against the article, please say aye. Aye. If you are against defeating the article, if you are in favor of the article, please say nay. Nay. All right, so now we're going to count. I can see the future. So again, if you are in favor of defeating the article, if you are opposed to the article, please raise your ticket now.
Say that again, Mr. Moderator.
If you are in favor of defeating the article, which means that you are opposed to the article, please raise your ticket now. Okay, those who do not wish to defeat the article, who would like the opportunity to pass the article, please raise your tickets now.
Conflict of interest laws. That's the whole time.
Forty-six. Okay, the motion to, the vote to defeat the article was 53. The motion to not defeat the article was 67. So the article is not defeated. We now move on to now that didn't solve anything. We now move on to the other motion that had been made, which was to indefinitely postpone this article. So we are basically taking the same vote again, but in another way. If you are in favor of indefinitely postponing this article, please say aye. Aye. If you are opposed to indefinitely postponing the article, please say nay. Nay.
Let's go.
I believe that that was in the negative. Okay, now a motion has been made and seconded to approve Article 18 as read. On the question of approving Article 18, this does actually open up the floor to discussion again because it's a new article. Does anybody want to talk about this article any further? Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Can I just give an antidote?
Well, we need your name first.
Matt Sam. I live in the Bay Shores. So I own a lot that was once bought in 1960. 2 lots are of average size of the rest of the Sunny Bay Shores. When I pass, if this one rule here that we can cross out eliminates my ability to give those 2 lots, 1 lot to one daughter and 1 lot to another daughter. That's what I'm saying. If we take this out, it gives me that ability to do that, to pass that on. Just because somebody bought 2 lots next to each other back in 1960.
As long as your lots are still what they were in 1960.
Correct. 2 average sized lots next to each other that are now 1 lot somehow, that I can no longer split them with my daughters.
How big a lot? Can you build 2 houses?
I'm sorry?
Will you be able to build 2 houses on those 2 separate lots?
I'm going to defer to either the planning board or the attorney, but I believe the answer is yes. If this passes, you'd be able to build on both lots. If it's a buildable lot.
Craig Cabral, the answer to that is yes. And that all this bylaw does is give the people the right, the people such as this gentleman here will be able to pass the property down to his children or have his children build a house next to them.
All right,
All it is.
I get the.
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Craig may not have been done.
You cannot create any additional lots. There's no ability to make another subdivision or subdivide anything. If the lot was created in 1960 when the Bay Shores said you could build a house there, that's all you get. And you still have to meet the current Board of Health guidelines. If you can't meet it now because wetlands have eroded, then you can't build there. However, all it's doing is giving the property back to the rightful owner.
All right, maybe I just maybe need some clarification. So like if my lot was combined years ago, I can now, when I die, give that lot to my children, let's say, and they can then build two houses that were previously unallowed due to zoning regulations.
You are correct.
So why do we even have zoning regulations then? If it's gonna make everything become the Wild West, where you can just build because you have the plot of land. A little confused on that. Because I had a lot of restrictions when I built my house and my addition. And now it just doesn't seem fair that we all have to go through restrictions and down the road, no one's gonna have to go through restrictions. I understand the spirit of it. It's great to give our kids things, it's great, but it's a detriment to the rest of the town. I mean, they put these things in order for a reason back in the day, it sounds like. I just need clarification on that.
Okay.
I'd like to clarify.
Erin, go ahead.
So again, this applies only to lots that as of 1964 were touching each other and owned by the same person. Okay, so if you're, and this was applied then, and as we've established, it was applied then because these were summer cottages, and the communities that they were in could not support them. We didn't have adequate septic resources that we now have. And again, it applies only to those. This would then make it so that as of 1964, if you in a contiguous parcel that touched it, if yours was owned by the same owner, and at that time you could have built houses, now you can. But of course, and again, the regulations you described that you had to go through, someone still would. All of these lots could be now divided or potentially divided, but they might not be buildable for other reasons. The land could be too wet, it could be too close to the pond. There could be, several issues that would make the land not buildable. But this would just make it so someone could try to pass down a buildable lot or to sell a buildable lot. So the privilege that you got to vote for with your property, there are unfortunately many people that have been deprived of that because they were unilaterally deprived when the law was passed that they unfortunately weren't made aware of.
So they benefited from the past.
Hold on.
They got a large lot of land.
Hold on.
I would say that having a large lot of land wasn't necessarily a benefit. It couldn't be controlled in the way that they wanted. It couldn't be built upon. They were taxed on it. I would also say that the town lost quite a bit of revenue because we did not allow people to build on what could be buildable land and otherwise move into said property and stimulate the economy. And we could talk, there would be many tax benefits to the impact.
Okay, hold on. We're going to Paul now because he's at the microphone.
Mr. Moderator, what I see this as, I understand all the plaintiff's issues. However, this is the beginning of the eroding of our bylaws for what size lot you should have, how much setback requirements. I see this becoming the eroding of one of the reasons why when we passed a number of years ago, going from a half acre to 3/4 to now at the acre and 3/4, basically at 70,000, that I see this becoming the eroding of all of those things that we put in place, and that the current planning board, which really works hard to try to give us livable space and so forth. The other thing I was going to say is and I understand the folks in the audience who are saying from the other side, however, where there is so much discussion, that's one of the reasons why when it was to say, maybe to put this article off, so then that the planning board gets involved. I know it's by petition, but the planning board can take it up to discuss it. And then there may be the Board of Appeals meeting with the selectmen and our attorney to say what best provides benefit to those folks that own these small, undersized lots by today's standard versus down the road. My point, there's too much confusion.
Well, we have that motion already. We'll take a motion to call the vote if that's what we're attempting. Okay, there we go. Motion is made and seconded to call the votes. Again, we don't debate this, we just vote on it. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The motion to call the vote is adopted by the majority. We now move on to the vote to adopt Article 18. This time it's exactly what it sounds like. If you vote yes, you like it. If you vote no, you don't. And this does require a 2/3 vote, yes. So, all in favor of Article 18? Aye. All opposed? Nay. Okay, all those who are in favor, please raise your vote paper. I will just, as I did before, I will say that did not sound like it meant 2/3, but I want to give the benefit of the doubt. So, if you are in favor of the article, please raise your vote paper. Stop. 15. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. All those who are opposed to Article 18, please raise your papers now.
Oh. Got that?
Yes.
33.
Okay, the yes votes are 64. The no votes are 57. Article 18 is not a 2/3 majority, so it is defeated. Somebody is very impressed with math skills. We move on to Article 19. Bear with me because Article 19 is quite long. Yo! Oh, thank you. I make a motion that we vote TJ Man of the Year. Take that on consensus. But our motion not to waive the reading, of Article 19 is made and seconded. This is open for discussion. This is basically saying that we just won't read the entire bloody thing. We'll move on to it after. I get the feeling that somebody's going to poke holes in your tires if you question this. Is there any discussion on not reading Article 19? This is only on not reading Article 19. Seconded. Here. Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? We will not read Article 19. However, we will jump to the end to say that Article 19 is submitted by petition. It requires a 2/3 vote. The Finance Committee does not recommend this article. The Planning Board does recommend this article. Now, it is our tradition when we waive the reading of the article to pass the summary on to the board that submitted it. This was submitted by petition. So I'll ask the Planning Board first if they'd like to say anything before we kick to the petitioners. And, oh, okay, there we go.
As stated in the prior article, this was submitted by petition. Planning board did not have a say in what was petitioned, and we couldn't remove it from the petition. So the vote was taken after discussion at the public hearing, and the vote was taken to recommend. Specifically because that we recognize a unique area in the Sonnet Bay Shores where there's a lot of undersized lots. These people are in their setbacks. It's not necessarily the square footage, it's more their setback requirements. They built a house at some point, you must add a deck. They weren't able to put a deck on without going to the zoning board of appeals, which is roughly $2,000 to go through the zoning board of appeals, just to properly use the property as the people intended to use. They have the same right to enjoy the property. The planning board was working on something to do for the Sonnet Bay Shores area. The petition beat us to it. We had a discussion on making the Sonnet Bay Shores a village residential, which we already have in our current bylaws, and saying the Sonnet Bay Shores area would be its own village. Technically, it's not a village, but it would apply to that zoning regulations. It doesn't change the square footage. It still stays 70,000 square feet, but it would reduce the setbacks from 20-foot side setbacks to 10-foot setbacks. Front setback instead of 40 foot would be a 10-foot setback. So it would lessen the significance of the property and how the owners could use their property without going through the entire zoning board of appeals to get a building permit for something that's inconsequential. But the petition article beat the planning board to that, so the petition article was heard as it was presented, and we took a recommendation at that point.
Okay. And we'll hear now from the petitioners, please.
To piggyback upon what Aaron Gifford, Hamill, to piggyback on what was just said, that's absolutely accurate in terms of a summarization of this this petition as proposed. You will see that itemized herein are several other subsections that essentially propose non-burdensome and non-unique requirements that relate to preserving the vanity, aesthetically pleasing community, as well as the charm of the community. So you'll see that the size of the home, the construction, houses must be sided in this community. We're looking here to preserve the charm of the Sonnet Bay Shores. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Moderator, I don't recall any lots in the Sonnet Bay Shores that were at 70,000 square feet.
I'm sorry?
I didn't think there were any lots that were in the Sonnet Bay Shores were at the current standard.
There are 4.
Okay.
There are 2 that predated the subdivision, and there are 2 that were created in the 90s that had to meet the size at that time. So there are 4 that meet the current standards. There are not, that I know of, any others that do.
May I ask a question through you to this person that was making the statement?
Yes.
Does she, 1, own any of the lots there? 2, is she a legal attorney who's representing other members in that area?
I'm going to preface that by saying both of those questions, the first question in particular may not be relevant to this, so you are free to answer it or not answer it if you wish.
In full transparency, sir, I'll answer both. I do not own a lot. I do not rent a lot. I'm a South Main Street resident. I have a law degree. I'm not yet a practicing attorney. I did participate with certified attorneys in the research, drafting, and presentation of the materials for tonight.
So therefore, you are representing members that own within that subdivision?
Representing in the legal sense is a term of art. So I must say for the record, no, I'm not representing in a legal representative capacity. But yes, in the literal sense, here I am speaking to you on behalf of members that do own homes.
It's fair to say that you're a spokesperson of the petition?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think, once again, Ms. Moderator, and then I'll get out of this microphone, that I think this, once again, as I stated previously, even though this individual is mentioning it could be 10 lots, it could be another 20 lots over in Heavenly Heights, or another 10 that might be down in Long Pond. So,
Paul, this petition is specific to.
oh, I know, but you opened Pandora's box, that's what happened.
Well, no, the first article was everything. This article is only one neighborhood.
Okay.
This article is specific, but I want to actually remind it, I don't believe we actually have a motion yet. Because we skipped reading it, I don't believe we had an approve or.
Make a motion to defeat the article as presented.
I had two competing motions right now. I had a motion to adopt, I had a motion, Paul, was your motion to indefinitely, Paul? Paul? Hi. Was your motion indefinitely postpone or defeat?
Postpone.
Indefinitely postpone, okay. And the other motion was to adopt as read. I got to check to see which one goes over the other.
Mine.
We have a self-appointed parliamentarian and a town clerk who packed the books away to her.
I got to the microphone first this time.
Okay, hold on a second. Talk amongst yourselves, please. Please, I'm sorry. Yes. Okay, motion to postpone indefinitely is a subsidiary motion. So motion to approve is read, takes precedence. Okay. Okay, we have our official answer to that. The motion to adopt as read is the primary motion. The motion to indefinitely postpone is the subsidiary motion, which means that we take the vote on the motion to adopt as read first. Yes. Okay, so our motion right now that we are moving forward with first is the motion to adopt as read. Go ahead, Sam.
Brian Almeida, Sun Bay Shores. My question is, so I heard the whole thing about being able to change setback, but I don't see that in this. I do see stuff that says I can't side my house with certain things and I can't do other things with my house. It sounds like I purchased my house knowing that I didn't purchase an HOA, and now I'm getting drafted into an HOA. It's restricting me to do the things that I want to do in my house.
So,
is that what it's saying?
I'm going to divide that into two parts. The first part would be your first question about the setbacks, and the second part would be about toward the end where it discusses the building and such of the house. If there's anybody that would like to respond either from the planning board or the petition.
This applies to the lots that are stated herein. It applies to new homes that would subsequently be built if this were passed hereafter. It doesn't affect the beautification requirements of your current home, but
But the first part was the setbacks. Does it address the setbacks at all?
Speaking for the planning board, the article is silent on setbacks, so it would be up to the zoning enforcement officer to determine setbacks.
Okay, and the zoning enforcement officer, for folks that are not familiar with the term, is the building inspector.
Theoretical question.
Okay.
One of these individuals has a house. We have a really bad storm. House gets leveled. Can they build a new house on that lot? A brand new house?
My understanding, and since Jeff, the zoning enforcement officer, is not here, I'll defer to the planning board If you know, if somebody's existing house is destroyed, do they get to rebuild it? I believe the answer is yes. but-
Absolutely you can. It's the same thing as the demo rebuild permit.
Right.
So if the person's house is destroyed or burns down, he's gonna be able to rebuild.
I would say that that theatrical question was entirely relevant to the article hearing.
Do we have any other discussion or questions or concerns on Article 19? Yes, sir.
So again, so the non-relevant is still relevant. So say I knock down my house and I want to 3D print it to the rest of that.
I'm sorry, if you knock down your house and then,
Yeah, so I want to knock down my house and then I want to 3D print it. This doesn't allow for 3D printing. So you're essentially, yeah, like a 3D printed house. This place is in Texas, the 3D printed house is in that. I swear to God, this is like a big thing in the space. So this is.
hold on. Go, keep going, I'm telling you, just chat. Hold on, folks, because we want to hear it.
Well, I mean, I'm just asking. This seems like it's restricting what I can do now with my property strictly because I live in this Assonet Bay Shores, even though I bought my property with the understanding that I can do things to my house. So if I wanted to knock down my house and build a new house, now I'm restricted to using this siding, this roofing, this.
Those bylaws are in the Assonet Bay Shores Association from 1964. All we did was duplicate them. So it's not anything we created.
So this isn't new?
This is not new. Those are the actual, read the association bylaws. Those are the association bylaws.
If I'm not mistaken also, so one of the petitioners is responding that the requirements for how the house looks and how it's constructed and whatnot are already in place. Was it mentioned during the planning board hearing that these were in the deeds, some of them as well? Did that come up?
Yeah, yes, you're correct, Michael. Those you read in there are already in the Assonet Bay Shores deeds. Deed restrictions.
So these restrictions already exist in some fashion?
Yes.
Well, it's in the.
I'll second.
It's repeated. I'm sorry, well, was that a motion to call the question? Is that what I? Yes, okay. And it has a second?
Second, yes.
But no, Paul, they've cut you off this time. Once again, the women are out to get you. Our motion is to call the question. Again, we don't debate this, we just vote on it. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion to call the question is is by the majority, adopted by the majority. So we are voting now on the question of whether or not to adopt this article. This comes first, then the other motion second. This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor of adopting this article, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Yeah, we'll take the count. I'm gonna, as I did before, I think this is leaning toward yes, but we're gonna take the count to be certain. So if you are in favor of this article, please raise your vote ticket now. If you are in favor of this article. Oh.
31.
Okay, all those who are opposed to this article, please raise your tickets now.
One page.
Well, it's a good thing we counted. The yeses are 47, the noes are 46. This required a 2/3 vote, therefore the article has been defeated. That is our last article, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please? All right, before we actually vote on adjourning, I was asked just to point out, Paul and Myrna Lubin, who are right over there, were our counters tonight, and they have been counting at these meetings for a good many years, so we just want to express our appreciation to them for counting. Yes.
Motion? Second? All in favor?
That is true as well. Our police force does do a fantastic job. I'm sorry, all in favor of adjourning? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Majority rules, we can go home. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you at our next meeting. Were created in the 90s that had to meet the size of that time. So there are 4 that meet the current standards. There are not, that I know of, any others that do.
May I ask a question through you to this person that was making the statement?
Yes.
Does she, 1, own any of the lots there? 2, is she a legal attorney who's representing other members in that area?
I'm going to preface that by saying both of those questions, the first question in particular may not be relevant to this, so you are free to answer it or not answer it if you wish.
In full transparency, sir, I'll answer both. I do not own a lot. I do not rent a lot. I'm a South Main Street resident. I have a law degree. I'm not yet a practicing attorney. I did participate with certified attorneys in the research, drafting, and presentation of the materials for tonight.
So therefore, you are representing members that own within that subdivision?
Representing in the legal sense is a term of art. So I must say for the record, no, I'm not representing in a legal representative capacity. But yes, in the literal sense, here I am speaking to you on behalf of members that do own homes.
Is it fair to say that you're a spokesperson of the petition?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
I think, once again, Ms. Moderator, and then I'll get out of this microphone, that I think this, once again, as I stated previously, even though this individual is mentioning it could be 10 lots, it could be another 20 lots over in Heavenly Heights, or another 10 that might be down in Long Pond.
Paul, this petition is specific to...
Oh, I know, but you opened Pandora's box, that's what happened.
Well, no, the first article was everything. This article is only one neighborhood.
Okay.
This article is specific. But I want to actually remind it, I don't believe we actually have a motion yet. Because we skipped reading it, I don't believe we had an approve or...
Make a motion to defeat the article as presented.
I had 2 competing motions right now. I had a motion to adopt, I had a motion... Paul, was your motion to indefinitely... Paul? Paul? Hi. Was your motion indefinitely postpone or defeat?
Postpone.
Indefinitely postpone, okay. And the other motion was to adopt as read. I got to check to see which one goes over the other one.
Mine.
We have a self-appointed parliamentarian and a town clerk who packed the books away too early.
I got to the microphone first this time.
Okay, hold on a second. Talk amongst yourselves, please. You have that, please. I'm sorry. Yes. motion to postpone indefinitely is a subsidiary motion. So motion to approve is read takes precedence. Okay. Okay, we have our official answer to that. The motion to adopt is read as the primary motion. The motion to indefinitely postpone is the subsidiary motion, which means that we take the vote on the motion to adopt as read first. Yes. Okay, so our motion right now that we are moving forward with first is the motion to adopt as read. Go ahead, Steve.
Brian Almeida, Sunday Shores. So I did that. My question is, so I heard the whole thing about being able to change setback, but I don't see that in this. I do see stuff that says I can't side my house with certain things and I can't do other things in my house. It sounds like I purchased my house knowing that I didn't purchase an HOA, and now I'm getting drafted into an HOA. It's restricting me to do the things that I want to do in my house.
So,
Is that what it's saying?
I'm going to divide that into two parts. The first part would be your first question about the setbacks, and the second part would be about toward the end where it discusses the building and such of the house. If there's anybody that would like to respond either from the planning board or the petitioners.
This applies to the lots that are stated herein. It applies to new homes that would subsequently be built if this were passed hereafter. It doesn't affect the beautification requirements of your current home, but
But the first part was the setbacks. Does it address the setbacks at all?
Speaking for the planning board, the article is silent on setbacks, so it would be up to the zoning enforcement officer to determine setbacks.
Okay, and the zoning enforcement officer, for folks that are not familiar with the term, is the building inspector.
Theoretical question.
Okay.
One of these individuals has a house. We have a really bad storm. House gets leveled. Can they build a new house on that lot? A brand new house?
My understanding, and since Jeff, the zoning enforcement officer, is not here, I'll defer to the planning board. If you know, if somebody's existing house is destroyed, do they get to rebuild it? I believe the answer is yes.
Absolutely you can. It's the same thing as the demo rebuild permit.
Right.
Of course, if the person's house is destroyed or burns down, he's gonna be able to rebuild.
I would say that the actual question was entirely relevant to the article hearing.
Do we have any other discussion or questions or concerns on Article 19? Yes, sir.
Okay, so again, so the non-relevant is still relevant. So say I knock down my house and I want a 3D print for the rest of that house.
Sorry, if you knock down your house and then...
Yeah, so I want to knock down my house and then I want a 3D print it. This doesn't allow for 3D printing. So you're essentially a 3D printed house. It says this house, a 3D printed house. I swear to God, this is like a big thing in the space. So this
Hold on, folks. No, keep going. I'm telling you. Just chat. Hold on, folks, because we want to hear it.
Well, I mean, I'm just asking. This seems like it's restricting what I can do now with my property, strictly because I live in this Assonet Bay Shores, even though I bought my property with the understanding that I can do things to my house. So if I wanted to knock down my house and build a new house, now I'm restricted to using this siding, this roofing, this.
Those bylaws are in the Assonet Bay Shores Association from 1964. All we did was duplicate them. So it's not anything we created.
So this isn't new?
This is not new. Those are the actual, read the association bylaws. Those are the association bylaws.
If I'm not mistaken, also, so one of the petitioners is responding that the requirements for how the house looks and how it's constructed and whatnot are already in place. Was it mentioned during the planning board hearing that these were in the deeds, some of them as well? Did that come up?
Yeah, yes, you are correct, Michael. Those you read in there are already in the Assonet Bay Shores deeds. Deed restrictions.
So these restrictions already exist in some fashion.
Yes.
Well, it's in the
I'll second.
it's repeated. I'm sorry. Well, was that a motion to call the question? Is that what I? Yes. Okay. And it has a second.
Second, yes.
But no, Paul, they've cut you off this time. Once again, the women are out to get you. Our motion is to call the question. Again, we don't debate this, we just vote on it. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion to call the question is is by the majority, adopted by the majority. So we are voting now on the question of whether or not to adopt this article. This comes first, then the other motion second. This requires a 2/3 vote. All in favor of adopting this article, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. Yeah, we'll take the count. I'm gonna, as I did before, I think this is leaning toward yes, but we're gonna take the count to be certain. So if you are in favor of this article, please raise your vote ticket now. If you are in favor of this article. Oh, thank you. Okay, all those who are opposed to this article, please raise your tickets now. Well, it's a good thing we counted. The yeses are 47, the noes are 46. This required a 2/3 vote, therefore the article has been defeated. That is our last article, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please? All right, before we actually vote on adjourning, I was asked just to point out, Paul and Myrna Lubin, who are right over there, were our counters tonight, and they have been counting at these meetings for a good many years, so we just want to express our appreciation to them for that. Yes.
Motion? Second? All in favor?
That is true as well. Our police force does do a fantastic job. I'm sorry, all in favor of adjourning? Aye. All opposed? Aye. Majority rules, we can go home. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you at our next meeting.